Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So let's review some more evidence. The soldiers who were on the scene agree on one thing. They thought it was a drill. Soldier Kira Bono, U.S. Army, says she thought it was a drill. We've got Private First Class Amber Barr says, we thought supervisors were holding a drill. We've got Corporal Nathan Hewitt. He thought it was a training exercise, and he'd been hit by a rubber bullet. Other victims thought the same thing. Then we've got Captain Dory Karskadon. Maybe it was a drill. She initially thought the shooting was a drill. Now, that's a field-grade officer. A captain compels a certain amount of attention. We've got specialist Scott Hamrick, First Sergeant James McLeod at the Soldier Readiness Processing Center, thought it was a drill. My initial thought is it was a drill, said Hamrick, because you know you're always getting drilled for situations. However, what Hamrick thought was a drill turned out to be something closer to home. You get the idea. In addition to this, the Miami Herald reports Skip Blancett, pastor at First United Methodist Church of Killeen, Texas, talking to his daughter, Holly Davis, who's either a worker on the base or in the Army. She's in the building next door to where the gunman was firing. They were in a lockdown. Everyone thought it was a drill at first. And indeed, during the crisis, the first thing posted on the Fort Hood website is, this is not a drill. It is an emergency situation. So what we see from this, we glean that unannounced surprise terror drills are standard operating procedure, a fact of everyday life on this Army base and other bases. Now, again, what happens when the drill goes live? But now, if all of these soldiers thought it was a drill, what did Major Hassan think? Maybe he thought it was a drill, too. And when he went to it, maybe Major Hassan, like Atta and the rest of those guys, thought that they were going to be actors in a drill. In other words, Hassan gets his pistols, props for his action, probably thinking it was sanctioned. This is a troubled, inept, quasi-psychotic individual, a low-grade subject, not likely to see what's taking shape around him. So he gets to the scene, the Readiness Center, and at some point, other shooters appear who take the drill live. They start shooting with real bullets. Now, whether or not he's shooting with bullets or not, we'll look at that in a minute. 100 rounds fired. Seems like a lot of shooting for one guy. Now, Major Hassan is not a marksman. This is not a combat soldier. This is a shrink. Even though he's surrounded by soldiers who are not armed, those are nevertheless combat veterans, hardened veterans, most of them. Seems like a lot of shooting for one guy with pistols that are not exactly, they're not, machine guns with endless feed. So the thing we have to look for is, were there other gunmen firing who knew that the drill was going to turn into a real massacre? Interestingly enough, extra gunmen is exactly what we find. So we've seen Hassan the Patsy. We've seen now the possibility of technicians, in other words, other shooters. Now, without going through all these quotes, it is clear that during most of the day, everybody, according to the news dispatches, was reporting 3 shooters, not 1, but 3. Here's a good example. London Daily Mirror, this is just U.S. Wire Services accounts. 12 people killed, 31 wounded, when 3 gunmen in uniform opened fire at the U.S. Army's largest armored base. 1 gunman was shot, the 2 others held at Fort Hood. These embarrassing accounts of multiple shooters, they're disappearing fast from the Orwellian internet. They're going into the memory hole. The spokesman, Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Banks, at one point in the afternoon says 2 shooters were apparently involved. No word about who they are. The second, this is also the case that it's not just the one shooting incident at the Readiness Center. There's something called the Howze Theater, H-O-W-Z-E. There's a shooting incident at that location, too. Not easy for Hassan to come to be present at 2 places. Anyway, Lieutenant General, the most authoritative, News Radio tells us Lieutenant General Bob Cohn at Fort Hood confirms 12 dead, 31 hurt in shooting. Soldier gunman killed, 2 others in custody. So, 2 other shooters. Were those the technicians, the people actually capable as marksmen, professional hitmen, whatever they were, able to carry out the shooting with some effect? And here's the other thing. Whatever we can say about Hassan, he is a man of miracles. He's the guy who comes back from the dead after 8 hours. Hassan is repeatedly declared dead from 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on your time zone, until about 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening. Hassan is dead, gone, finish. But then General Cohn, the commander of the base, comes out at 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening and says, no, he's alive. He comes back from the dead, more than Lazarus. He comes back from the dead. So we've gone from 3 shooters to 1. We've got the Hauser Theater shooting incident completely expunged, and we've got this ability to do shooting. It reminds you of, could Atta fly the plane? Could Oswald shoot the shots? Could Major Hassan get off all those shots in such a short period of time with 2 pistols, one of them semi-automatic and the other not even that? Now, here's the other thing. The categorical imperative for every patsy is to get noticed, right? Look at Oswald. Oswald hands out leaflets in favor of Cuba. Oswald goes on television and says he's a Marxist. He goes to the Soviet Union, tries to go to Cuba. Atta, right? The stare of Atta. He's looking like the Sheik in Rudolph Valentino's 1920 movie, right? He's got that hypnotic stare that nobody ever forgets. Atta takes time to have a fight about a parking space in the airport in Maine on his way to death. And he doesn't think he's on his way to death. He thinks he's on his way to be an actor in a drill. But he's been told to do these things. So what does Hassan do? He gets on his white robes and his white prayer cap and goes to the local 7-Eleven that day and makes sure that he is filmed. We've got also this stuff that he does, right? We've got a whole trail. We'll go as much as we can. He tells his neighbor, I'm going to do good work for God today. And, of course, the obligatory shout of Allahu Akbar just before the firing starts. Now, who's doing that shouting? If it's Nidal Hassan, that's one thing. Could be somebody else, though. It could be part of a scenario script of a drill. Now, what has come out then over the intervening days is that the guy is a psychotic. He's obsessed with these religious themes, and he gives this PowerPoint presentation to the staff here at the Uniformed Service University of Health Sciences, Bethesda, Maryland, and this is all about his own situation. He called the Quranic view, the Quranic worldview as it relates to Muslims in the U.S. military. That doesn't sound very Islamic. That sounds academic to me. That reminds me of Atta's will and testament, full of elements that are utterly alien to Islam, written by some half-baked area specialist. Back in a minute.